So I'm going to talk about hummingbird plants, and really there are a lot of hummingbird plants. People think, oh, I got some real specific ones. We always tell people just plant a diversity of beautiful things, and you're probably going to hit native pollinators, hummingbirds, all kinds of things. But I'm going to tell you some that we know are really do attract hummingbirds. I've got a couple here because I wanted to talk about a couple of things. This is our native Campsis radicans, trumpet creeper, trumpet vine, and you can see it's got these long tubular flowers. That is something that the hummingbirds love. They want tubular flowers. They've got that long beak. They are especially adapted to those tubular flowers. Now, there are hummingbirds all over the world. They are they're not, with the exception of some in some tropical areas, they're not specifically, going to only native plants, our native hummingbirds. They travel long distances and live in other parts of the country. They're snowbirds. And so really, as long as the flower structure is right and it's got nectar, they will want to use them. So this is a trumpet creeper. Typically, this is an orange flowered one. And I bring this out because if you have a preference in a flower color, if a specific plant that I'll talk about has different flower colors, the closer you get to red, the more attractive it is to the hummingbirds. It doesn't mean there's more nectar. It doesn't mean it's a better structure. It's just they see it better, so they come for it. But they don't have to be red. So this is a great plant. This is a big vine, vigorous vine. You don't want to plant this on a little flimsy arbor because it will tear it apart. But if you have a big arbor, if you have something like that, you can grow it up through the trees. That's how it grows naturally. Really a great plant. And you can tell this has a lot of nectar on it because it's also got a lot of ants on it that are collecting that nectar as well. So and they are all coming out now that I've got this cut. But a great plant, and so there's long tubular flowers. Now, a tubular flower can mean different things. We think of something really big like that, but pulled off of our plant cart there, this is a Heuchera from the cultivar Dale's strain. I don't know who Dale is, but this is actually a really good plant. Flowers are just past on this, but they're small tubular flowers on this. And the hummingbirds will come to this as well. And I show this because we think of hummingbird plants as all being sun-loving plants. And that's really because those bright flowers tend to be sun plants, but there are shade plants that will attract hummingbirds as well. Hummingbirds, they go in shade, they'll do just fine. So the Heucheras and the tiarellas can also support hummingbirds as well. So there are some shade plants, although we're not going to talk about a whole bunch. I did want to mention that. All right, one thing when we do these tours, I love questions. Please ask me questions. I'll do my best to answer them. I'll tell you I have no idea if I have no idea. I also love for everybody on the tour, if you have thoughts on a plant, if I say something that hasn't matched up with your experience, let me know. It's always helpful. I learn, you learn, we all learn. It's a good thing. So without further ado, we will head on out into the garden. Pro tip, y'all, if you're outside gardening a lot, you wear hats. Get those ears covered especially. All right, next plant here, another one of these long tubular flowered plants. This is a crinum. This is Crinum Cecil Howdy Shell. When you grow a crinum, there's two ways it'll be. It'll either be big and lusty like this, or it'll peter away to nothing if it gets too much shade. But then if that tree falls, this thing will come back. I don't think there's ever been a crinum that's been killed. They last forever. It's a great big bulb down there. So really easy. They grow in wet soils. They grow in dry soils. They'll grow anywhere. As long as they have sun, they'll flower for you. There's all kinds of different ones. Now, if you're growing a crinum, put it where you want it, because if we dig this out, if I get the interns to dig it out, because I wouldn't do that to our full-time staff, You are likely to break a shovel doing it, at least one, maybe two. They are brutes to get out. They root in and are something else to get out. The best thing to do is dig a big circle or square around it and then try to go underneath everything and get it up. But super easy to grow, and the hummingbirds love it. Again, that tubular flower is great for the hummingbirds. Any questions? Yes. I'd say probably, what's the minimum number of hours of sunlight? I would say probably you'd want at least 4 hours, 6 hours preferably, but 4 hours would do that. There's one that's perhaps the most widely available is one called White Queen. We call it floppy white because the flower stalks always lay on the ground. So don't get that one. It's just, they always lay down. They don't stand up straight like this. And again, the flowers on these tend to be white to pink. There are some slightly darker ones. The darker the flower color, the better it is for your hummingbirds.
Why is that?
I think, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they just see that color better. Although I see hummingbirds around in the evening, and white flowers are easier to see in the evening, and they will go to white flowers. But I don't know if it's a, different wavelength or whatever that they see that. But that's why hummingbird feeders are always red, and they have the little yellow fake flowers on there so that they know where to stick their beaks, because typically you'll have in a flower the eye down the center is a little bit different color. I am guessing at the reason for red flowers, so educated guess, but. So our next plant is pomegranate, Punica granatum, pomegranate. This is the pomegranate you get at a grocery store, farmer's market, wherever. And hummingbirds are really attracted to pomegranates. Now, there are some, like this one, which are double flowered. So there's just a ton of petals in the middle. What happens, the way a plant gets all those petals, typically, there are a couple ways, but typically all of their sex organs, their pistils and their stamens become petaloids. So you don't have any of the nectar producing parts. Or in case they don't, some just produce more petals and still have those organs inside, but they're harder to get to. So what you want to look for in a pomegranate or other plant is not the double flowered forms. You want the single flowered forms. If you're unsure, if they don't list single or double flowered, usually they will list, if you're buying them, that it's a double flowered one, and so you stay away from those. But if it's a good fruit producing one, that way those will have single flowers because they got to have those sex organs to get fruit. So you want to look for those. So I love pomegranates. They make kind of upright shrubs like this. The flower buds are almost like pleather. They're like orange pleather. That's fake leather for those of you who didn't grow up in the 70s. And then they open up to these orange flowers. Then if they get fruit, they have these orangey fruit hanging on there. They really are showy over a long, long season. And they're mostly tough as nails. There are some, if you live in a real cold pocket, there's some that were bred in Russia. And you can tell which ones those are because they have names like Savalaski, I can't even say it. But really cool flower, and that texture of those buds I just think is so cool. It's nothing else like it. Questions?
So do you have any singles anywhere in the Arboretum?
We do. We do.
Do they make edible fruit?
Yes. There's actually one that we sell fairly often, mostly because I cut it in my garden, called Mini Francis, and it grows about this big. It's in full flower right now in my garden, tiny, tiny leaves, and it fruits, it flowers and fruits. The fruits are only this big. They've got about 4 seeds in them, not much juice in them, so not very good for using, but they love, they're really easy in terms of producing fruit. You only need one. You don't need to have multiples of them like you do with some other fruits. They're very self-fertile, and they need sun. These really like sun. Yeah, the one in the xeric garden is really showy. Yeah. Okay. Next plant we have, this is Syningia Salovii. Syningas are African violet relatives. They're in the Gesneriaceae family, the Gesneriads. And based solely on my garden, if I were going to plant one plant for hummingbirds, it would be Syninga. Syningas are fantastic. The hummingbirds love them. What I also like about them, if you're into photography, they will, since there's so many little flowers, they will go from flower to flower, and you got a better chance of getting a picture of a hummingbird than you do otherwise. We have several Syningas through here. There are different types of Syningas, but the ones with the tubular flowers are the best. And I found actually one of the white pink flowered ones, Syninga tubiflora, is one of the best that I've grown. But they love this, and they love all of these tubular Syningas. These things grow. They'll grow in full baking sun. They get actually a relative amount of shade over here and still flower and grow well, but they grow from corms, from underground structures like bulbs, and they can get huge. I've dug up ones that were easily 18 inches across, and you can take those and whack apart and plant them, and they'll pop up no problem at all. Easy plant. I love it even when it's finished flowering, although it'll flower for months, but that foliage, this thick glossy this thick glossy foliage is lovely in the winter. Cut it back to the ground. Easy plant to grow. Soil moisture. No, these Syningas come from really dry areas, so they are really good. And if you have, say, a sunny side of a tree, the south side of a tree, and the sun gets there, they're great. They will grow right in that root zone. No problem. That big tuber is there for desert conditions, really, where a lot of them grow, and so they can if it gets brutal, hot, dry, they can die back, and they have that tuber. But we generally don't get it dry enough here, even in conditions like this, a drought like this. We don't get dry enough to affect these at all. Oh, clay soil, yeah, no problem. That what can happen if you have really heavy soil, that corm, as it gets bigger, will kind of push itself out of the ground, and then you just dig it up and replant it, or leave it up above the ground, and it'll be fine that way as well. Maybe the question was, do they root from cuttings? Can you just stick them in some water? You can root them from cuttings very easily. I have a feeling they might rot if you just stick them in water, but you don't want to cut a flower head. That won't root. You have to cut something without flowers on it. This is going to have flowers. You pluck that off, or you get some of these down at the base, little short things. But yeah, if African violets are one of those things that they always teach in plant propagation classes, because they're very easy to root, and these are as well. How about deer? What about them? No, these should be pretty deer resistant. They've never touched them in my garden. I don't think there's nothing in the leaves that, no scent, but they seem pretty good. They look, like they'd be luscious. They're nice and tender and whatnot. Haven't touched them yet. I don't know. I don't think there's probably good information out there about that. All right. Keep moving. The next great plant for hummingbirds is Kufia. And Kufias have all kinds of different common names. Some of them are called bat face flower, because the little, if you look at the flowers, they've got little like ears on them. The houseplant Mexican heather is a Kufia. Different ones. This has little pink flowers with yellow tips on them, and you can see it just is covered in flowers, and will continue through most of the season. Easy plant, full sun, likes a fairly well-drained soil. Kufias are a mixed lot. This is a little one. There are some that get 3 feet tall that flower in late fall. Kufia micropetala grows really big. I love it. It looks like candy corn when it flowers. Kufias are another one that tend to be relatively deer resistant in my experience. Easy to grow, long flowering. They can be a little tricky if it get a lot of winter wet. Sometimes they'll rot away if the soil isn't well drained enough. But super easy. And I picked this because this has got a really long season of bloom, but I want to mention that about flowering. You know, we don't have the hummingbirds around too early. So mid to late spring through, depending on the weather, through as late as October or even November is when you want things in flower. But it's really from that mid-May to early fall that you're really getting the bulk of your hummingbirds. And you want to get them out to you fairly early in the spring because if they like what you got there, they will just keep coming back and back and back to your garden and stay there. So you get them hanging around, you get nests in your garden, and you'll be seeing a lot of them. You even can get to know them a little bit. You know, you'll see the same ones, and they act different. The males can be very aggressive, guarding their territory. They're fascinating animals to watch. Comment was one of our native buckeyes, Escaspavia, the red buckeye, flowers pretty early spring, end of March or so, and that'll get the hummingbirds to it. And, yeah, as early as March, as you're really getting them around. So you want to capture them early like that, and then that'll finish flowering fairly early as well. So you want to have a succession of things that'll keep the hummingbirds around. It's the great thing about hummingbirds is they love showy flowers, just like us. This is Erythrina ex Bidwillii. This is a hybrid Erythrina or coral bean shrub. It's easy to grow. Sun, well drained, relatively not well drained, dryish soil. Doesn't want to be too wet, although you probably couldn't kill it even with that. It's got these red tubular flowers. I mean, this is textbook hummingbird plant. One of the parents of this is Erythrina herbacea, which is a native plant that has very similar, not quite as big, not quite as showy, but these big red flower clusters. Erythrina herbacea will die back to the ground in the winter. Bidwillii, in a mild winter, it'll stay up and get a little bit bigger. We cut it back to the ground every winter. We think it flowers better, looks better, everything's better when you do that. What's great is a lot of these really deeply colored flowers are more summer, late summer flowers. And so this really starts early and it keeps going. You can see there are buds in here, spikes that haven't even started flowering. There'll be more that come. Couple cautions to it. It does have thorns. I don't know if you can see this, but on the petioles of the leaves, it's got little thorns. So technically they'd be prickles, not thorns. Prickles, is that?
They're coming from the epidermis.
All right. Got it from our botanist, got it right. Got one wrong the other tour. Any questions about this? Oh, this isn't a cultivar. This is Erythrina ex Bidwillii. So it's a hybrid, and this is probably the easiest to find. Not always easy to find, but the easiest to find. Put this next to your crinum where you're never going to move it because, oh my gosh, I literally almost broke a backhoe, a small backhoe trying to dig one of these out. They are a lot. Okay, next plant is Hesperaloe campanulata. This is really a desert plant. It's hard to see because it's got a grass growing up through it, but this is the foliage on it. It's called Hesperaloe because it's got kind of that aloe, yucca, agave type foliage, and it comes from really dry areas in the Southwest and into Mexico. There are several different Hesperaloes. This is my favorite. I like these pink flowers. I think they're really sweet. You grow it in a sunny, well-drained spot, just like you'd think with a lot of these desert plants. And it flowers really early in the season for one of these type of desert plants. And it flowers for a pretty long time, get these big arching stems. And this is really neat to watch the hummingbirds come and dangle underneath these flowers. Once you get in the ground, not much you got to do about it. Foliage stays nice and low, so it's a good thing with these tall stalks. You can kind of put it in the middle of the border, and these these flowers will come floating up above everything else. Any questions? All right, let's see. We're gonna backtrack just a little bit. So here we have one of our native deciduous azaleas. Rhododendron summer snowfall. And this is a late blooming one, very late blooming form with these pure white flowers. You can see azaleas and rhododendron tend to have tubular or campanulate flowers that with these long stamens, and hummingbirds love rhododendron. It's not something that we think about terribly often, but if you want some plants in the shade, and I especially think they like our native deciduous azaleas or our hybrid deciduous azaleas, and you can get ones that are bright red. Rhododendron flammeum, one of our natives, tends to be orange to red, and you can actually get deciduous azaleas that flower from spring almost all the way through summer. There's a really late blooming one called the plum leaf or cherry leaf rhododendron, rhododendron prunifolium, that flowers very late in the season with orangey red flowers. Grow these in sun to shade. They want a moist, well-drained, acidic soil. That's the classic for rhododendrons. That's what we would all want if we were plants. I find they're fairly tough, really, once they're established. Deer love them. If you got a lot of deer, you're going to struggle with these. They'll get quite big, some of them, so you can, if you can get them large enough, you can actually get the leaves so that they're above deer height, but getting them that way will take a while, some caging or something like that. All of them are great, and there is, you talk about a rainbow of colors. You can get deep saturated yellows, oranges, reds. You can get pastels in all of those colors. You can get whites. It's really kind of the sky's the limit. Pinks, lots of pinks. Fantastic. What species or hybrid is this? I don't know what's giving it its late flowering, characteristics. It looks a little bit like robust paracliminum, so maybe that's in the parentage, but I don't know the parentage on it. So Marilyn, who has heavy deer pressure, says that the deciduous azaleas fare better than the evergreen rhododendrons and evergreen azaleas because they don't have leaves during the winter when a lot of the deer are out. They love them in my garden. They eat the heck out of them, so what can you do? Okay, our next plant is this hardy hibiscus. This is Hibiscus syriacus Gandini Santiago. It's sold as purple pillar. Not so pillar-like when it gets a little bit of age on it. It gets pretty wide. Hibiscus are great hummingbird plants, and most things in that family, the Malvaceae family. So hibiscus, the flowering maples, abutilon, will do really well. Hollyhocks, all of them. Now these aren't so tubular shaped. They're wider, but they still seem to attract hummingbirds pretty well. I will say when you get hibiscus, be careful. Some of them will seed around quite a bit. Some of the older cultivars, and they can be not invasive, but they can be kind of garden weedy kind of plants. Hibiscus syriacus comes from, the Syria area. That's why it's called that. It's extremely drought tolerant once it's established. Loves as much sun as you can give it. and flowers over a really long period. There's no fragrance to speak of. I'm still kicking myself. I stayed at an Airbnb one time and there was a white one and it was just delightfully fragrant. And I've never smelled them before. This thing was incredibly fragrant and I'm kicking myself for not taking some cuttings of it. Beautiful. I think they tend to be, yeah, they're not my favorite plant from the whole plant perspective, the way they look. They just somehow look a little bit sparse. I don't know. I don't know what it is about them. They're just not my favorites. But you can't deny those flowers. When it's in full flower, they're gorgeous. Can you keep them cut back pretty short? Yeah, you can cut them back. You want to do it right after it flowers, after it finishes flowering, you can cut it back. You know, if you're doing it from when it's really young, you could probably keep it really small. If you cut this back hard, that would be fine for the plant. It would come back out of it. It probably wouldn't flower for you next year. It'd probably miss a year of flowering, but you can cut it back short. All right, we'll keep on moving. So it's the last plant I'm going to talk about. This is a penstemon mountain treats purple. There are a lot of penstemons. Many of them have blue flowers. Some have white. They're pink ones. We have native penstemon to North Carolina. So there's a ton to choose from. And we should be growing more penstemon. They only occur in North America. They don't occur anywhere else. And yet, almost all of the cultivars, like this mountain treats purple, I'm not sure where this one comes from, but traditionally they all come out of Europe. They did all the breeding in Europe and then ship them back to us. And this has been an ignored plant for us, which hard to believe it's been a plant that we've been ignoring. The hummingbirds love this, as do other pollinators. I was standing here and saw, bumblebees and 3 different small little wasps or bees or flies that were around here. I've seen hummingbirds out here at this patch, especially in the evening. I don't know what it is about the evening with these, but that's where we really see them a lot. Penstemons, for the most part, want sunny, well-drained soils. That's their best thing. This is kind of a newer one that we're evaluating in our perennial trials. We've got some other ones that have not fared quite so well. So these, because they come from the western areas, they tend to not love humidity. So that's the key, is getting ones that will tolerate high humidity. So this is why we do some of these trials. We've got patches of this that are pretty sad looking right now, but these mountain treats are really good. Questions?
Do they seed well?
Do they seed well? No, they don't self-seed much at all.
What are some of the native species that we should be planting?
So penstemon hirsutus is a native one. Penstemon digitalis is I don't know if it's native in North Carolina, but it's native to the east, so it's a little bit closer. But most of them are coming from kind of the Rockies and west. We didn't look at annuals at all, but a lot of annuals are great for hummingbirds. Lantana, which crosses that line between perennial and annual. Petunias can be good, and actually a lot of the raid flower things like sunflowers are pretty good for hummingbirds. But really, it's probably if it's a showy flower, there's a good chance that hummingbirds will visit it. But the ones I talked about today are ones that hummingbirds especially like. But don't limit yourself to this, because there's an awful lot of things that they will visit. What about spigelia? Spigelia, pink root, has a real beautiful tubular red flower that opens up to yellow. It looks to be the best hummingbird plant ever. I've never actually seen hummingbirds on mine. I don't know if it's a nectar thing or I don't know if it's just I've missed the hummingbirds on it. I don't know. Has anybody had experience with hummingbirds and spigelia? Okay. Looks like it should be.
Yeah,
That is true. Agaves, they love agaves, and so you can see multiples on an agave when they open up, and those are perfect flowers for hummingbirds. So we typically have quite a few in flower over the summer here. You can see one in flower right now over here, but yeah, they are great hummingbird plants. Yeah, the Salvia garnitica, really all the sages, the hummingbirds love, and those are out, and it doesn't matter if they're white, red, blue, pink, they come to them. Any other favorite hummingbird plants that I didn't talk about?
My hummer feeder.
A hummer feeder. I don't talk about hummer feeders much because they take a lot of care. You got to keep them cleaned out regularly. Like every time you fill them, you really should take them and clean them thoroughly, because they can spread disease if they're not cleaned. Okay, yeah, what Blake mentioned to us is that nectar, and rightly, I should have started with this, comprises only about 15% of the hummingbird's diet, and the rest is soft-bodied insects. And so the nectar is really there to give them that quick jolt of energy. It's like the caffeine, it's carbs, and it gives them energy for their long distance travel and while they're finding those other insects. But you really, as we say all the time, you should plant a big variety of plants. Don't use insecticides because that will kill those soft-bodied insects. And so it's about diversity in your garden. That's going to be always going to be the best thing for the most insects, birds, little critters, everything, is if you use a variety of things and you don't spray. And you need to spray, you don't need to spray if you're planting a variety of things. It's planting one thing that you need to spray often. Excellent. I will mention, not for this necessarily, but there were a couple of syningias on the plant cart. Might have been a salvia or two. There were several things up there that were good hummingbird plants.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank y'all for coming out.